and identifying birds. So you'll need a few things. You need decent binoculars. Binoculars make the difference between little brown boring things and real beautiful birds. You know, so do yourself a favour if you haven't already got a decent set of binoculars. They're not that expensive. A good set, a reasonably good set, you can get for $500 or $600. And field marks. Look for field marks. You know, you can't always see the bird in the wild as it is in the book. The detail's not there, but you need to learn the shape of the bird, the size of the bird, the way it carries itself, and so on, to have a bit of a clue. And also the habitat it's in. They're all part of identifying birds. It's not just actually seeing the bird and recognising what it is. So yeah, pair of binoculars. Oh, can everyone see those? Yeah.
Yep.
They're $600 pair. They've been everywhere with me. They've been beaten up. They've never been in their case since from the day I bought them. They've been in the rain. They've been dropped in seawater. They're great. And bird books. You need a bird book if you haven't got a bird book. And the ultimate Australian bird book is that one. Can everybody see that?
Okay.
Australian Bird Guide. Now that's a fairly expensive, fairly heavy-duty book that covers all birds in Australia, which you possibly don't need in Tasmania. In which case, if you're not going to be fair dinkum as a birder, just Tasmanian only. That's not bad. It's out of date now, by Dave Watts. Birds have turned up in Tassie since Dave wrote this. Oh, it's all right. Get the focus right. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
And because it only has Tasmanian birds, it's not so confusing. For example, if you've got the Australian bird book and you want to look up, you think you've seen a honey eater, you open the book and there's 68 species and you just completely freak out and give up bird watching. Whereas there's only 10 species in Tassie, and this book narrows it down, simplifies it, if you want to go that way. Right, so there's 800 odd species of birds in Australia, depending who you talk to. There's splitters and lumpers among the boffins, as you know, with plants. They do the same, change the names all the time, split them up, lump them together and so on, but roughly 800. Compare that with Colombia.
Are you a splitter or a lumper?
Sorry?
Are you a splitter or a lumper?
I'm a lumper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you don't need to complicate it. Like plover, the common old spur-wing plover that you get around here, they call it masked lapwing these days, that has a close relation in northern Australia called the masked lapwing, and it's less. The northern one's got longer legs. It's paler. It's really quite a different bird, I think. And it used to be 2 species, and now it's considered 1. Anyway, look, you can make your own mind up about that. But just to give you an idea of where Australia stands in the numbers of birds, native birds, we have 800, as I said, or a bit more. The birdiest country in the world's Colombia in South America with 1,800, because they've got the enormous. They've got 2 coasts. They've got Atlantic and Pacific coast, and they've got altitudinal variation. They've got mountains nearly 20,000 feet high. So you've got these climatic zones, which makes for a very rich bird life. Just for the record too, the UK has recorded about 570 species. So Australia sits reasonably well, given that it's a very dry place. It doesn't do too badly for birds. And Tassie's got about 200, and 12 of those are endemics, which we'll touch on as we go through the photographs. Now today we're going to talk about land birds, that is anything that's not a water bird or seabird. And land birds are generally perching birds. There's 2 broad groups of birds, passerines and non-passerine. There are groups that overlap just to keep it difficult, but that's part of the challenge of being a birder. It's not easy, but today we're talking about the perching birds or passerines for the most part. So what have I got to say here? Now look, being a, you know, a full-on birder, I've got a volunteer here.
Oh,
Poor little bugger. I didn't kill him, promise. He
right.
actually flew into a window
Oh,
at our
Ah.
place.
Yeah.
And I've got this specimen to show you some of the parts of a bird. If you're going to interpret a bird book, you need to know the description in the bird book will say things like primary feathers, black or green or whatever. They're the primaries, for example. These are the secondaries here. Can you see that? How am I doing with the picture?
it's a bit blurry. Let's
Just take it back.
Bit blurry?
uh,
We're not going to get it perfect, I don't think.
That's
No, I
better.
don't think
No,
that's
it's
going to
all right.
work. Anyway, this poor little bugger's a silver eye. Can you see the silver eye in the picture?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've been harping on about birds' feet and perching birds. So if you can see, can you see that foot?
Yeah.
Yep.
With 3 toes forward and 1 aft, with well-developed claws for perching. That's exactly what passerines do. They're perching birds. Okay, so you've got, there's the vent, there's the rump. These feathers here where the wing joins the body are scapulars. But look, if you go to your bird book, look at the diagram of the parts of a bird, and if you understand what the parts of the bird are, you can understand the text in the bird book when it's describing a bird. All right, that'll be enough of that. I can do that better. One of these days, if they ever let us out, we might run a proper class like I did before.
Yeah.
Where, I'll turn up with all kinds of birds and bird parts and nests full of vermin and all sorts of things, which I've had happen. Some of you will remember. All right. I think we can have the pictures done.
Yep, just 2 seconds. I'm just inviting somebody else again, so keep talking for a second, Cole.
Keep talking. Let me go to my notes. I've got some notes here to keep me on the straight and narrow. And the first group we're going to deal with today is honey eaters. And as I said before, there's 68 species in all Australia, 10 of which live in Tasmania, a couple of which are endemics. And endemics means they live nowhere else. This is their the only place in the world is where they've evolved. How are we going?
We're going good. You should all be seeing that that first slide. Are you all
Yep.
Yep.
great? Excellent.
Do you want to click on from the beginning?
Yeah, I shall in a second, Frank.
Okay.
I'm just checking, and just to let everybody know that a few people haven't been able to connect, and they have sent me text messages, and I've been able to connect them. So if anybody in future Zoom things does have a problem, this system's actually working really well. I've had 4 texts that I've solved in the time that Cole's been talking. So, yeah. All right. So now we're about to start the session proper.
All right, and honey eaters, of course.
There we go.
Honey eaters, of course. Oh, there's our bird's feet. There's your passerine's feet up at the top. And raptors come into the perching bird group. You see that? Whereas you've got water birds, parrots. We'll talk about that as I go along, but you can see the vast variety of adaptations in birds' feet, which tells you something about their habits. So honey eaters adapted mostly to feeding on nectar, but not always, and there's not always nectar available. So most of our honey eaters are also insect eaters. Some of them glean under bark. There's various adaptations. So we'll go to the first one, an endemic. That's what the E stands for, lives nowhere else. That's our yellow wattlebird. It's Australia's biggest honey eater, and it was sought after for food by the early settlers. Apparently they're very good to eat, which seems a little bit a bit rugged by today's standards, but that's how it was.
I've always found them a bit tough.
Yeah, yeah, and by the time you get the feathers off them, they're pretty minute as well. But it's an aggressive bird, and it there is some altitudinal migration with them. And this is a beauty. This is another endemic, the black-headed honeyeater, a gorgeous little thing, mostly a canopy feeder. It lives on lerp, which is a kind of little leaf-sucking insect that exudes a sweet substance called lerp. It eats that, eats spiders, eats nectar. Gorgeous little bird, very aggressive, gets around in groups.
Oh,
Yeah.
why do so many of our honey eaters have short beaks?
Well, for example, this one we're looking at on the screen now is the strong-billed honeyeater, and it's adapted to lifting bark and feeding on insects under bark.
Okay.
And Reese has just changed the screen.
Sorry, folks. You're right. Back again.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Cole?
Yeah.
Maureen, can you tell me if these birds, when you say they're endemic to Tasmania, can you tell me if they're in the northwest? Or are they
All these birds today, that's something I didn't tell you, I failed. They're all can be seen in the northwest. And by the northwest, I mean from Narontapu, the Rubicon River, west to Cape Grim, south to Granville Harbour, inland to Rosebery, and then take a line from there back up to the Rubicon. And that's what I'm roughly calling northwest Tasmania. So all the birds you're going to see today can be seen here. A hell of a lot of them right here in Wynyard, if you look.
Thanks.
So there's the answer to the different length beaks in honeyeaters is just adaptations for different feeding habits. So this one takes the place in Tassie of tree creepers. We don't have any tree creepers in Tassie. There's a heap of them on the mainland, and they climb up vertical trunks like that and glean insects from the bark. So it's got a stout, sharp, strong beak for that reason, and very big feet to hang on.
Thanks, Cole.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
that's they're cute. This is the only Tasmanian honeyeater with a white nape stripe, so it's easily identified. Gets around in little groups of about half a dozen. They're gorgeous. We love them.
Cute.
What happened? Didn't go.
Oh,
We've had a malfunction here, folks. Bear with us.
Just hang on a sec, people. Just need to go back to the.
Thank God Reese is here is all I can say. Or maybe you'll be sorry, I don't know.
What is that?
Okay, you should all be seeing that again, are you?
Strong honeyeater?
No.
Not yet.
It's June's lovely black cat.
Okay. She's an indoor cat, not allowed out to catch the birds.
Where are we going?
Making the most of this opportunity.
Okay.
Righto.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is another endemic. This one's very common, even right here in Wynyard. I'm sure you'd all have them in your yard from time to time.
Yeah.
The yellow-throated honeyeater.
Can everybody mute, because we're really losing a lot of sound. Just unmute when you want to ask a question. That's all it is.
Yeah. All good? All right. A common endemic bird, very aggressive, has a very well-defined territory, and it's a serial monogamous. It will have a female. Each male has a territory, entices a female into there, breeds with her, and then gives her the brush off when she's raised. Well, they together raise the young. The male does a lot of the feeding of the young, and then he sends the missus and kids off and gets a fresh one and starts again. And they can do up to three broods in a year. That's not going again, though.
Isn't it? Oh,
Typical Tasmanian.
Pardon?
Typical Tasmanian.
That's it.
Jeremy.
We've got an issue. Sorry, we've got an issue with the.
okay, just we'll go down this way. You're right.
What now?
That's okay. Don't worry. Yeah.
All right. There's another one that's very common here, and when you'd all have it, and they annoy the hell out of you. They chase other birds away, very aggressive. The little wattle bird, very loud, but yeah, they're part of the scene. You would all have them in your yards, I suspect. There's another beautiful bird. Now here's the other kind of honey eater bee. This one's highly adapted for very small blossoms. It can get its beak in tiny blossoms where the bigger honey eaters can't, so that they can't compete with it. It's the eastern spinebill. It can hover like a hummingbird, and it can utilise fine little flowers like correas and the introduced pineapple sage. If you want to encourage these bees, plant yourself a few specimens of pineapple sage. They love them, and the sage is too flimsy for the wattlebirds and yellowthroats to utilise. So these guys have free reign.
Oh, can I ask a question? Maureen,
Hey?
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I've out on the mainland. I only ever saw them in one at a time, or maybe two. And down here, mainly one or maybe two. But in the 70s, I went to Flinders Island, and I saw a huge number together.
Yeah, that would be
Or about 30 or 40 together.
that would be non-breeding season, and they're possibly grouped up to move somewhere else. They're quite nomadic.
Okay.
Yeah. So they'd be rafted up together to make a shift somewhere.
So that could happen anywhere.
Yeah, but not in the wintertime. That's a wintertime habit as a rule.
Thanks.
Now you all know this guy too, the New Holland honeyeater, which is a stupid name. Its original name was bearded honeyeater. It has a little white beard, which you can't really see in that photo. Another aggressive, stroppy little character, bickers with the wattlebirds all the time, but a lovely garden bird nonetheless. That's a group of them in our bird bath when we had the place down at Montague, and there's one lone silver eye there waiting his turn and he's probably having a bath without having a bath by the other the honeyeaters making a mess. Another fairly common honeyeater, but not as common as the ones we've just dealt with, the crescent honeyeater. You're likely to see that down here on the coast in the wintertime. There's an altitudinal migration, goes back up to the mountains in the summer, and migrates to the coast in winter. Another one you won't see often lives in heathland, tawny-crowned honeyeater. I won't dwell on that. They're hard to see. Not that uncommon, but they just tend to be not often seen. Now we've got another group of birds here, pardalotes, thornbills and so on. So these guys, you'd all know these. That's the striated pardalote. It'll nest under your gutter, in your roof, in post holes, up the exhaust pipe of an old car if you've got an old wrecked car sitting in the yard for long enough. They're pretty cool birds, but they'll drill a hole in a bank, in an earth bank, and nest there. And they're very busy, mostly canopy feeders. They feed on lerp and other insects. Gorgeous little bird. And this is its close cousin, the spotted pardalote, with the red rump. Very similar habits. Nests in tree hollows or a hole drilled in the bank or a car exhaust. Now these two, even though I'm a birder from way back, in the field, these are hard to pick apart. Don't beat yourself up if you can't determine which is which here, but that's the Tasmanian thornbill is endemic, and the brown thornbill is all through southern Australia as well as Tasmania. Gorgeous little birds. They live right here in Wynyard. We have a little colony of them that live in our yard here in Wynyard.
Are they migratory, Cole?
Just something nomadic rather than migratory. Yeah. This is a great bird. You don't see many of them this far west in Tassie, but we did have them at Somerset when we lived there. The yellow rump thornbill spends a lot of time on the ground. This one. You'd all know this one. That's the specimen I got too, the silver eye, and that's just tossing down the fruit of a Coprosma quadrifida, which is a native fruit. Another good plant to plant in your gardens if you want to attract birds.
In fact, that photo was taken from the bush block up at Moena.
Fabulous photo.
Yeah.
Excellent photo.
It's just tossing the berry down very deftly. Now, these two, again, fairly hard to distinguish in the wild, and they live in the understory in heavy forest as a rule, so the light isn't usually good, but there is a significant difference if you can get a good look at them. And the one on the left, the Tasmanian scrub wren's another endemic. We had one here in our yard, right here, and when you do, as you know, we've planted a few habitat plants and created a bit of a heathland down the back, and it was very pleasing to see that they had moved in. And the other one, the scrub tit, is another endemic Tasmanian, more decurved beak than the scrub wren, and it doesn't have the pale mad eye. The scrub wren has mad eyes, and scrub tit doesn't. So they're just diagnostics. They glean insects from the undergrowth. There's a whole raft now of robins and wrens and flycatchers and so on. So we'll start with the scarlet robin, another quite common bird here in northwest Tassie. The male, obviously, a robin, and the female has a wash of pinkish red on the breast. That's mum and dad there. Build a cup-shaped nest. Hunt with the perch and pounce method. You'll often see them sitting quietly on a fence post or a low branch, watching for some creature to move, and then they'll just dive down and snap it up. That's how most of the robins feed. That's its close counterpart, the flame robin, and a lot of people have trouble distinguishing one from the other. The female flame robin never ever has a pink breast, a red breast at all, not even a hint of it. But if you look at the male there, you can see how the red is, for a start, it's a more orangey red, and the red runs up very close under his chin and right down near where his legs join the body, whereas I'll just go back to the scarlet. You see the scarlet, it has more of a black throat and less red on the front. It's a brighter red, but there's less of it. That's just a little done.
The headlight.
And the headlight too, of course. Yeah, the headlight on the scarlet robin is much bigger than on the flame robin. You see, he's got a small headlight. What we call the headlight. That cool? And this one, which I'm happy to say we have on our property up at Moena, is a gorgeous thing. It's probably the smallest of our robins, and it's the most fabulous thing. Once again, lives in wet sclerophyll forest or rainforest in the understory. The female there sometimes has a very faint pink wash, which you can see there.
Cole, do the robins breed? Do they interbreed the scarlet and?
No, they don't, and they actually occupy quite different habitats. The scarlet robin is more of a forest dweller in the tall forest, whereas the flame robin likes open areas and will often be seen feeding on the ground. And the pink robin, it lives in ferny, damp gullies, moist gullies. So 3 completely different habitats.
Cole, that pink robin is in Fern Glade as well. I've seen it in Fern Glade.
Yeah. Yep.
I did.
Pink robin at Fern Glade.
Yes, that'd be right. It's that those ferny, damp gullies it likes. This is another endemic robin, the dusky robin. It's the biggest of all. It's slightly bigger physically than the others. Very plain and sits very still. It will often be seen just sitting on a fence post or a low limb, waiting for something to move. So it can dive down and get it. All right.
Am I likely to have seen a dusky robin in my back garden?
You are, indeed. Yes.
Yeah, I reckon I did last week. Yeah.
Yeah. And they've got a sort of a thick head.
Yeah.
For want of a better explanation, a thick head. And they're quite big eye. And when they sit still, they sit very still.
It was on my bird bath. Had white markings on the wing as well.
Yeah, not very pronounced though. You may have had a female flame there, but hard to pick without seeing it. Oh, and that's another thing. If you guys see a bird and you can get a photo of it, even a lousy photo on your phone, send it to your local bird nerd, whether that's me or someone else. We may be able to identify it from the photo. Even a lousy photo is better than nothing. That's we all know about these little fellas, and they get around in family groups. And there's one alpha male that sort of rules the roost, or thinks he does. But what happens in the breeding season is the females are quite promiscuous, and they push off. And they bang other males around the district and come back. And what that does is increases the genetic variation in the species. So the female will be sitting on eggs that the male there thinks are his, and half of them aren't. But that sort of strengthens the breed, if that makes sense.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Yesterday I was sitting on the veranda watching the superb fairy wren flitting around, and he seemed to, well, he always is agitated. But then I spotted another male, hiding, it seemed, in a shrub right near the veranda. And he waited till the other guy buzzed off, and then he kind of tentatively came out, had a look around, then he took off. So would there be 2 in the same territory? Yeah,
well, and they use, sometimes if a male wants to go through another known male's territory, he will carry a little yellow flower or part of a yellow flower as a flag of truce, sort of, saying, look, I'm not here to interfere with your women, but of course he will if he gets a chance. But, or more importantly, the women will interfere with him if they get a chance. Yeah, that's just the way it works. There's a very strong territorial clan connection between these birds.
So he could have been hiding, because he looked to me like he was hiding. He wasn't carrying any yellow. He wasn't furgling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the junior males often not fully coloured, or in the breeding season some of them might be coloured up, but they're always looking for a bit on the side, and they also help out with the troop, looking after the young ones. Now, this is the one on the left, is a southern emu wren, fantastic bird. It's called an emu wren because you can see its tail feathers there are.
Wow.
The webs are not joined. They're like an emu's feather.
Southern emu wren.
Pardon?
Southern emu wren.
Yeah, southern emu wren.
Turning to the bread, 5 minutes.
Good on you. Not that uncommon, but uncommonly seen. That photo was taken just down here at Rocky Cape. If you know what you're looking for, you can find them. Great little bird. Very tiny, very interesting. The other one is a striated field wren. Easier to see, but there again, fairly thinly scattered around the northwest. Tends to live on open ground but with heathy or tea tree cover nearby. Bounces across the ground like really fast, travels really quickly. As you can see by its strong, long legs, it's a fairly adapted bird to running.
Oh,
Yeah.
we had them nesting under thistles. They built their nest under thistles for protection, which is very interesting.
The striated field wren.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Well, they would. Yeah, that's interesting because not surprising though, because the thistles would be some sort of protection for them.
Yes.
Yeah. Well spotted. All right, whistlers. That's the golden whistler, Mum and Dad. An insect feeder. You would have all heard the golden whistler's call. Quite distinctive. Lives in forest. Often hard to see, often very high up in the trees, but a gorgeous bird. In fact, that photo of the male there doesn't do it justice. They're a bright, bright yellow. And its cousin, the olive whistler, tends to operate lower in the forest, lower down, and loves tea tree thickets and stuff like that, the olive whistler.
Is its call the same? Or similar?
No, only similar. You can tell that they're related. You know, groups of birds often have a similar pitch, or there's some component of their song that you can detect is related, but no,
They're more
quite different.
melodious, though, aren't they?
Yeah, and ends with a like a wet tune. People reckon, the old timers reckon, that when the olive whistler sings, it's a harbinger of rain, which is not true. But its last note sounds like wet you. Oh, I'm going to wet you. So that's what the oldies think. Anyway, I don't think that's the case. But all right, some other bush birds. Now this one is a migrant, comes down from the mainland every year, the satin flycatcher. And that's a male on the left and the female on the right. They look like completely different birds. And check out the nest. A few bits of bark held together with spider webs. But they're a regular and not uncommon summer visitor to here. And there's our commonest and most numerous flycatcher, the lovely grey fantail. You'd all know that one.
Mm.
Have you ever seen their nest? They build the most fantastic nest. A little cup, yeah, held together with spider webs, with a tail on it. It's got like a beard on it. White-fronted chat, another common bird, particularly along the coast. That's the male on the left, the female on the right. I dare say you've all seen that, have you? Has anybody not seen a white-fronted chat?
I can't recall seeing it.
Oh, okay. Often seen perched on the top of a samphire bush or some coastal shrub.
They're not really nowhere in populated areas.
No, they don't particularly go in farmland, or not well-developed farmland anyway. They like a bit of tussock and rushes and shrubs and so on. Righto, the Bassian thrush, another great bird that lives around here. Again, a forest floor dweller. It tends to live in damp forest, not always, but mostly prefers damp forest with a lot of leaf litter. And to feed, it hops along on the forest floor, will stop, vibrate up and down, vibrate its feet very rapidly, and then watch. And what the vibrating feet does is it scares various invertebrates out of the leaf litter, and then it'll pounce on those. And you can see it's got a big eye because it lives in low light. Beautiful bird with that scalloping. Another common name for it in Tassie is scaly thrush, for obvious reasons. And I've just got a picture of a female blackbird there to compare. They are similar size, and to the initially you'd think, oh yeah, could be the same bird, but that's the difference. They're there together to point out the difference.
The eyes are really big.
Yeah, the eye is much smaller in a blackbird, and its scalloping is nowhere near as heavy. Righto. And speaking of blackbirds, that's the male, of course, on the left with the yellow beak. All black. A sort of a, sometimes they're blacker than that, but not always. Once again, there's a classic case of a photograph not necessarily telling you the whole story. Beware when you look in the bird book and see the actual colour of the bird. If it doesn't look like what you saw in the bush, don't panic, because the light has a lot to do with it, and the time of year too, because they do change a bit. With old worn plumage tends to be paler than new fresh feathers, and so on. And of course, on the right there's starlings and sparrows, good old introduced pests from the northern hemisphere. Beautiful birds though. Starlings are just absolutely gorgeous, but again in the field they just look black. Now, here's your Annie, your grey striped thrush, male and female. Male on the left, female on the right. Good bird. A bit of an omnivore, will basically eat anything, and will domesticate really easily. If you feed them, they'll become very tame very quickly. And on our farm in South Australia, they used to come inside. We had a family of them there that would come hopping in the kitchen, in through the kitchen door if you left it open.
Oh, Joe here. Annie's story was interesting. Annie's story and your response was interesting to me, because when I'm working out in the bush, in our bush block, the shrike thrush often comes and just hops around where I'm working, stacking wood or whatever. But then if the car's parked there, it often goes to the windows, the side windows, and looks in and pecks at the windows. And I thought it was admiring itself, but you're saying that it's seeing a competitor.
Well, it's more likely to be trying to see off a competitor, but yeah, we believe that's the case. Maybe they are a little bit narcissistic as well. I don't know.
Because it seems to sing and peck and make a lot of noise, but whether I could.
Well, yeah, well that's another thing, Joe. Birds singing. It's not to make a nice melody and sound good and please everybody. A bird singing is really announcing its territory and telling everybody else to push off. That's what it is.
Yes. Yeah. I'll revise my thinking then when it happens.
They're not as nice as we think.
So what it's saying, Joe, is I'm beautiful and piss off the rest of you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but pretty cool birds. They are very endearing birds. And here's another gorgeous bird that lives right around here in Wynyard, the firetail finch, but less and less common. Depends on a lot of dense understory for cover, and it'll feed on open ground. It feeds like most finches. It mostly eats seeds, but it needs a heavy understory. And if you want to have them in your yard, plant plenty of dense understory plants, because these kind of small birds many species of small birds are very vulnerable to kookaburra and butcherbird attack, and without low vegetation they can't avoid other predators, and so they just get killed out and you never see them. So if you want to attract birds to your garden, you need a multi-storied forest, if you like. You need your big trees, but you need low stuff as well as stuff in between, if that makes sense. Righto, these are all introduced species, but they're kind of gorgeous in their own way, and especially the goldfinch. It's a fabulous bird, and you can see there it's got thistledown around its head. It's been either feeding on thistle seeds or collecting thistledown for its nest, and I don't know which in that instance. The one on the left, they live here in Wynyard. I've seen them in our yard, the greenfinch, and of course sparrows are everywhere, particularly if you've got chooks. And there's a bit of grain spillage or whatever, you'll have sparrows. Now here's these are a gorgeous bird too. They breed up on Tollymore Road, among other places, but I've seen them breeding there. Here in Wynyard, they're a migrant. They come down from the mainland every year, the dusky wood swallow. The nest is often extremely well hidden. As you can see on the right, there's young birds in the nest, and the nest's a few sticks jammed in a bit of a crevice in a fork or in the bark of a big tree with loose bark. And they always look very neat. They're one of the kind of birds that have powder down feathers. They have patches of special down on them, which powders up when they peck at it, and that's how they clean and groom themselves with this powder, which is like talc. It sort of goes right through their feathers and keeps them in good condition. Pigeons have the same thing, a very fine powder down. All right, swallow.
Paul?
Yes.
Are they seen here in summertime or wintertime?
Summertime.
Summertime. Thank you.
Yeah. They very wisely go back to the mainland for winter. All right, swallows. Now, the one on the right's a normal swallow, and I've put the one on the left in simply because it's an example of how birds can throw you. That is what we call a leucistic swallow. It's a freak, and it hasn't got its full pigmentation. It's not an albino, but it's only partly pigmented, as you can see, and it looks like a completely other kind of bird, which is why I harp on a bit about getting used to the bird's shape and the way it flies and its habits to identify the bird, not just from its colour, you know. But you can see that they're both the same species, and they can trick you. There's another quite common summer migrant to Australia, the tree martin. And some of them winter over, but not many. Most of them go back to the mainland. And their diagnostic feature in the field is that big white rump, very, very obvious. And their tail is more or less squared off. It's not forked like a swallow. But aside from that, you can see that they're related to swallow.
And these are the birds that anybody who went up to our place was seeing over the waterfall. That was the tree martins that were flying in through the waterfall.
And they nest. There's a colony of them nesting under the waterfall at our place up there. Quite a big colony of them. And they build nests on the side of cliffs, or in shallow caves, or in your shed if you've got a suitable shed that is more or less uninhabited. Oh, and they hawk for insects on the wing. Very aerobatic. Yeah, catch insects on the wing. That's how they feed.
When they migrate to Australia?
All right.
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
When they migrate back to the Australian mainland, do they do so at great height? What height, altitude?
Who's talking?
Rob, we still can't hear you, mate.
Your sound's no good. Come again, maybe closer to the microphone.
When they migrate to Australia, what height do they fly at altitude?
No, I can't get you, Rob. You're cutting in and out. We're getting only every third word.
If you want to type your message on the chat bar, we'll see it, Rob.
Yeah, go for it.
Down the bottom, on the bottom line, you should have a chat line.
How am I doing for time?
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
A tree martin could be what we've got, not welcome swallows.
Who's saying that?
Who spoke then?
I did.
Deanna. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm not sure whether we have tree martins or the welcome swallows.
Where are you?
Lake Llewellyn.
You'd probably have both there. More likely to be swallows, welcome swallows, but no reason why you couldn't have tree martins there in the summer.
Okay.
Fern's message just came up on the bottom, but it disappeared again.
Okay, hang on a minute. I'll just go out of this screen share and just check that, and we should be able to see it. No, did you read it, Joe?
I think it said something about what altitude.
Here, when they migrate to the mainland, what altitude do they fly at?
We don't really know is the answer to that, but probably quite high. I know a lot of the waders, the migratory waders, they fly at 3,000 metres or thereabouts. I don't know that these little birds would fly that high. There's no reason why they couldn't. That gets them away from predators, you see. And they often fly at night. Even silver eyes, that little fluff ball, there's this little character here. Believe it or not, that crosses Bass Strait every year. It weighs a few ounces, goes across at night to avoid predators. But
Does
no,
it have any rests along the way?
No. No. They aggregate in mobs at Cape Portland or Cape Grim. Some of the ones from Cape Portland might stop at Flinders for a spell too, but most of them just, when they go, they go. They just take off and go. And that's not far. I mean, it's 250 kilometres, which is not that far for a bird. We're jammed again. She's not. Thank God I got the engine driver here. It's not working again. Bear with us.
It's because we went back to the other thing. Should do it now, I think. No? Okay, hang on a minute. I'm going to have to stop sharing and start again. Sorry.
It has its flaws, this system.
Oh, well, yeah.
But it's still
Pretty good.
It's still working.
Better than housework, Carl.
Housework, what's that? All right. Another couple of very similar birds. Difficult to identify one from the other in the wild. One, the left side one with the insects in its mouth is the European skylark, Eurasian skylark, and the one on the right is the Australian pipit. The easiest way I find in the wild to identify them is that the Australian pipit, when it flies and lands, it will often bob its tail vertically like that, like waving a few little bobs, whereas the European skylark won't do that. And the skylark doesn't always have a crest either. It has a crest, but that's not always evident. So anyway, insect eaters, nest on the ground, usually at the base of a tussock. Ground dwellers, quail. They're brown quail, just for the record. They're the commonest kind of quail you'll find here in Tassie. I'll go back to them. Just take a good look at they're gorgeous birds. Those feathers, the markings are just something special, I think. And there's another very cryptic bird that's very rarely seen. Not that rare in Tasmania, but rarely seen, and that's the painted button quail. And the reason it's a button quail rather than a real quail is that it's not related to the true quails. Even though looking at it, you'd say, oh yeah, they're related. They're not. This one is related to the waders, and it has no hind toe. Its foot doesn't have a hind toe at all, not even a vestigial one. So it's another group of birds altogether. But for convenience, we lump it with the true quail. Gorgeous bird though. Quite a few of them down around Smithton, well, and elsewhere. They're widespread. Has anyone ever seen one?
No.
No. No.
And that's the two other species you get here. The one on the right, the stubble quail, is pretty scarce in Tassie now. The common one is the one on the left again, same bird, brown quail. You can see the difference there. The stubby quail, we call them. I'm in the habit of calling it a stubby quail. Stubble quail is more strongly striated than the brown quail. The brown quail is barred. If you look, and that's a fundamental difference that you need to understand if you're identifying birds from the bird book. You've seen a bird and it talks about barring. Barring is transverse bands like that. You see those dark bands run across the grain, whereas striations or stripes are longitudinal. That's just part of identifying birds. Both species in Tas. The common bronzewing in Tas is actually not very common. I've found that the brush bronzewing is much more common. They're not as different to look at as that photo indicates. They are much more similar looking. The brush bronzewing on the left is a dumpier bird, and this fella doesn't show there, but it's got more metallic in its wing and a deeper coo. They coo like all pigeons should, but this one, the common bronzewing, has a noticeably lower voice than the brush bronzewing, and they call a lot, so that is a handy diagnostic to have.
Cole, I wanted to ask you about the brush bronzewing. We had at Agamba, for years, we used to hear them call because they go
Yeah, on and on, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really lovely melancholy kind of a call. And then we didn't hear them for years. But just recently, we think we've seen, because they're on the ground and then they kind of run and then flutter away, and we haven't heard them, but we think that they're back. Where would they go in an interim?
Good question. They may well have been predated by something and just disappeared altogether, and you've now got new recruits come in from somewhere else.
Okay.
They tend to stick around a locality. They're not particularly migratory or anything. No, I would say that some nasty thing befell them. That's more likely. I saw one when I was last out at your place, Joe.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
How many people set cat traps? I've just caught another large feral cat yesterday, and I've caught 7 so far this year.
Oh, we need more of you, Sue. Yeah, keep it up.
No, really, I mean, it's staggering just how many.
It is staggering.
there are.
I caught one in my possum trap once on Mount Roland and dispatched it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we send them to cat heaven, yeah.
Me too.
That might actually, now that Sue said that, that could be an answer, because we knew that there was a feral cat going between Calder Road and Stennings Road. We saw it, and several other people saw it when they were out at the block. So that might have been exactly what happened to the block.
Oh, yeah, entirely possible. Absolutely.
I set it with fresh liver and La Poigna abattoirs. Quite happy to give it to you, and that's what they love. And also they particularly like a brand of the dried food that's got a lot of purina in it. It's called Purina cat food. It's a bit expensive, but geez, I tell you what, it catches them.
Well, you think of the small creatures, skinks and birds you've saved just by trapping.
Oh, look, they're back in my garden again. They were absent for a while, but they're back. So it's great. Well,
good work, yeah.
Hey, going back to the bronzewing, I always thought his call sounded a bit like the tawny frogmouth.
It does.
You hear the bronzewing in day and tawny at night.
Yep, they sound similar, but the frogmouth will usually be more vocal at night rather than through the day. Yeah, but yeah, well spotted. That's a true statement. Yeah. All right, in the air. This fella, there were a heap of them came through this year. The white-throated needletail used to be called the spine-tailed swift, which is a better name. If you look closely at your photograph there, where I've got the pointer, can you see little spikes?
Oh, yeah.
And here on the wing, there's a few little spikes, and they are just the shafts of feathers without barbs on them. And the reason they have those exposed spikes is it's like a third leg. When they, as you can see, they can't.
I was trying to blow it up.
Oh, yeah. They can't take off readily from a flat surface because they have very tiny, weak legs and feet. They're adapted to be fully aerial, and they even mate on the wing, so they virtually never land. Or when they do, they land on a vertical surface so they can take off again. And if you have a look at those great long awkward wings there, you could understand that. But yeah, the spines in the tail act like a third leg on the cave wall or the cliff face where they nest as a prop, so that they're like a tripod. Gorgeous bird, just so wonderfully adapted to life on the wing, and they feed on insects on the wing, and they tend to follow low pressure systems around the globe. Thunderstorms and unsettled weather, you'll often have them in hundreds. They'll appear sometimes very high, but they're not uncommon, and there were quite a few came through here this year. And some of them are low down. Michael Hyland got some good shots of them from his little perch on the lighthouse at Table Cape. Gorgeous bird. They've even got special feathers over their eyes to protect their eyes, like sort of built-in goggles. It's quite... And how the hell they can see insects and snap them up at 130 kilometres an hour is a mystery, but they do. Almost waterbirds. Little raspbird on the left and reed warbler on the right. Once again, skulking, secretive little birds, but they'll live on islands of reeds in your dam and your farm dams and so on. We had the little raspbird at our place in Somerset, where we were supposed to go for a field trip actually, and it may well happen in springtime. And the reed warbler, I haven't seen them up in this part of the world, but they were over Port Sorell way. Beautiful song, live and nest and eat insects in reed beds. And now there's a raft of parrots and cockatoos. Now this is our endemic rosella, the green rosella. It's possibly, arguably, the dullest of the rosellas. Why Tasmanian birds, the scrub wrens and so on, there's a few that are, the Tasmanian version of them is more, not as brightly coloured as the mainland, which is odd given that we live in low light down here a lot of the time. I don't understand how that, what advantage that would be, eh?
Would it be something to do with the colder weather, because darker colours hold in the heat more, maybe?
Oh well, that's a possibility. It certainly would be better, yeah.
A bit of camouflage.
And it's certainly better camouflage. But I mean, if you need camouflage, why are the mainland birds so bright? And when they've got good light.
It's light and shadow often is.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the way it works. And as you can see there on the right-hand side of your screen, they at times feed on man ferns. And you can see there they've actually stripped a lot of the leaves of that man fern. But you'd know their call too. They say cussing, and they're pretty cool birds. And there's an even cooler bird. That's our swift parrot, yeah. Seen them here. We've seen them in our yard in the big eucalypts. Those two big eucalypts out the front. They have been known to pass through. A specialised nectar feeder, brush tongue. Its tongue ends in a brush for harvesting nectar, and it migrates to the mainland. It disappears every winter to the mainland, comes back in the spring, breeds here in Tassie, and then and feeds on flowering blue gums. And you'd say, well, all right, with all the blue gum plantations around, you'd think they'd be in heaven, but they're not. There's an interesting fact about eucalypt blossom, that the flowers of a eucalypt increase in nectar content with the age of the tree. So all those young plantation trees are not nutritious as far as swift parrots are concerned. And what they need is old, very old blue gums, which of course are getting less and less. And they also need tree hollows to breed in. And we've very unhelpfully chopped down most of the trees with hollows in. They're either deemed dangerous or they make good firewood. And the result is that this bird is under serious threat. It's also under threat from predation by sugar gliders on its nestlings. Now here's another gorgeous and not that uncommon parrot that lives around here, the blue wing. Hard to see. They're so camouflaged. Even though they're brightly coloured, you can see when they're on the ground, they're almost impossible to see. And it's easy to miss them but they're declining too. This species, I guesstimate, and I've been looking at birds since I was a little tacker. This species has declined, I reckon, 80% in my lifetime, which is scary. You know, the orange-bellied parrot that they spent all the money on looks like it is on its last legs. And really, nobody's been looking at the blue wing, which is common or was common and is declining alarmingly too. And we need to figure out why these birds are dying out. It's not entirely feeding habitat, possibly nesting habitat. Introduced starlings using a lot of their nesting sites, which is a problem. But we don't really know, and more work needs to be done on some of our common birds that are in decline, rather than spending squillion bucks on. I'm not knocking trying to save the orange-bellied parrot, but what I'm saying is I think it's a gone coon. It was on the way out before white fellas ever came and interfered with things, and maybe it's a lost cause, you know.
The lorikeet in WA has done the same with some of our local species of parrots, because it feeds on nectar and gets in the garden, so it feeds all year round, whereas our seed-gathering parrots only nest once a year. Yep. And these ruddy lorikeets are so aggressive, and you see these fights going on where there's a decent nesting hollow, because the poor old, you know, ring-necked parrot's trying to get in and lay its one lot of eggs, but those other buggers have been there all year.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's dead right. So the rainbows are taking over the world, basically. They do the same here. There's the fabled orange-bellied parrot. Reese nearly cleaned up a third of the world population. I was in the car one time, we were driving down near the Heemskirk Ranges on the road to nowhere, and a group of them flew up off the road, and they just missed the windscreen.
Showing there all the delightful red orange belly right in front of us.
Wow.
2 inches of the windscreen.
Spectacular.
How embarrassing that would have been. Eastern Rosella, probably our most colourful bird in Tas. I've never seen them this far west. I don't know if anyone has any of you seen them over this way? No, they were quite common around Port Sorell and over that way, but they like it a bit drier, a bit too wet for them here. So there we are. There's the problem. One of the problems we've got, the introduced rainbow lorikeet. Very dominant. In fact, it's dominant on the mainland too. It's increasing in numbers and range everywhere. Yep. Suitable habitat. And on the right is our cute little original musk lorikeet, which is a gorgeous bird, but it's being elbowed out by the rainbows to some extent.
And bred with.
And apparently they interbreed too, and I believe the young are mules. They can't breed, so the hybrids don't breed, which is a problem too. So yeah, but gorgeous birds nonetheless. And there's our apple, the end of our apple orchard. That's the yellow-tailed black cockatoo. Gorgeous creatures though, you can't hate them. Vandals though they are. And they're one of the few native birds that's learnt to utilise introduced pine plantations as food. They eat the pine, the seeds from the cones of Pinus radiata. There's not many other birds with a powerful enough beak to break into the cones. So
we have a resident family here of 3. That's mum, dad, and the offspring. But occasionally you get as many as 50, even 100 coming through.
Yeah. They seem to mob up and shift camp from time to time. Very nomadic.
Probably coming through from our place. We've got about 100 at a time sometimes with all the pine plantations. Yeah.
And I was going to ask that same question too, that why is it, I once, again out at our block, I counted 75 cockatoos that flew over in, parties of 20 or more. And yet other times you just see 1, 2, 3, maybe 10 in a group. So what does the big group mean, Cole?
Well, the big group would be an aggregation of those little groups, sort of rafting up to go and look for better food. They're very, very much nomadic. Australian birds are largely adapted to a nomadic lifestyle just because of the vagaries of our climate and therefore the intermittent nature of food. But you'll sometimes, if there's a ready food source, you'll get a few that will become residents. And that's happened in Townsville too when I lived there with the red-tailed blacks. One year they came the red-tails had never lived in the Townsville district until we had a bad drought, and I'm talking about probably 40 years ago. And so they were driven out of the inland by starvation, and they came to the coast looking to survive. And by the time they got to Townsville, the good old Townsville City Council had planted lots of terminalia trees, the bush almond, all around the foreshores and parks and wherever, which were producing seed at the time. And the red tails from the inland, which is normally an inland bird, turned up on the coast, found the terminalia trees and said, thanks, we'll stay. And they've stayed ever since. There's been a resident population there just because the food source is there. So,
yeah, we've had the same in Perth. The red tails have moved in and they love the Cape lilacs.
Yeah.
And you'll see them coming in and just checking it every so often to see if it's ripe. But once it's ripe, they're in en masse.
Yeah, that's right. They're opportunistic. Well, they're very intelligent birds, the whole cockatoo and parrot family. And everybody knows this guy. Yeah, pretty cool. Very cool, in fact.
Very noisy.
Yeah, they've got the worst voice in the bird world, yeah. But again, need tree hollows to nest, and that will be their nemesis rather than a lack of food, be nesting habitat. Now, well, we all know the galah native around here. They think they were introduced. Or cage escapees from way back. And the long-billed corella, I've seen a big mob of those at Ulverston. Has anyone seen that bird here?
No.
Another common name for it is bloodstained cockatoo for obvious reasons. Anyway, you can see its extra long beak, and it's a very adaptable bird too, and it seems to find parts of Tasmania farming areas to its liking, so it's on the increase. Now this is a hard bird to see. Not hard bird to hear, but a hard bird to find and see. That's a female ground parrot. The male has a band of reddish orange across where his beak joins his forehead there. Yeah, just there. That's cool, I think. Yeah. Lives in swampy country, button grass plains, heathy swampy territory. Very susceptible to, of course, to feral cats. Nest on the ground. It's a sitting parrot, if you like. Yeah, I don't know about its future. Probably not good in the long run. And, of course, draining swamps and all the farming that goes on. Farming's been a great enemy of a lot of these birds. Now, raptors, and while they can perch, they're not officially perching birds, but they're not water birds either. And the difference between ordinary perching birds and the owl family are the feet. And owls, like parrots, have, instead of 3 toes forward and 1 aft, they've got 2 forward and 2 aft, which you can see in that blue book there, actually. It's just there's two each way. Yeah. Whereas frogmouths on the right there, which aren't owls, have ordinary perching bird feet, 3 forward, 1 aft. So it's just a little bit of something. If you find a roadkill or something and you're wondering, you're having trouble determining whether it's an owl or a frogmouth, just look at the feet. They're a world apart. It's just another means of identifying what you're looking at. Did somebody want to say something here? No. Now these two can be confused if you're not used to looking at owls. They're not as different always in the wild as these 2 photos would indicate. The barn owl on the right, though, is always identifiable by being very pale, and it has much smaller, less woolly feet than the masked owl on the left. And the masked owl is much bigger, and it has a much more hunched posture. So if you see a Taito type owl with a big facial disc sitting in a tree, and it's hunched and looks like it's pissed off, really. It's most likely to be a masked owl. And a female masked owl is a Tasmanian female masked owl is big enough to hunt rabbits, full-size rabbits. They're a pretty mean machine. Whereas the barn owl was absent for Tassie, was in Tassie years and years and years ago, seemed to disappear for many decades, but it's recently come back. And Michael Hyland got a photo of one up on Table Cape in relatively recent days.
Is that because of the use of the rat poison killing the owls who eat the rats that have got the poison?
I don't know the answer to that. So quite possibly that was a contributing factor, but I don't know. Anyway, it appears to be re-establishing itself in Tasmania. Now there's the owlet nightjar, and that's neither an owl nor a nightjar nor a frogmouth, but it is a crossover species between frogmouth and nightjar. And it's an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous bird. Eats insects, has the soft feathers like an owl or a frogmouth, silent flight, nocturnal, of course. You've only got to see the size of the eyes to figure that out. But that's how you'll often see them. They live in tree hollow. And I remember we camped at Lake Tinaroo in Queensland one time, and there's kids and us, and we've got sailboards and there's racket and motorbikes going on, and there, just above the camp, literally only 4 metres above us in a tree hollow was one of these, looking out, taking it all in, just observing these crazy humans and what they were up to during the day. It seemed quite unconcerned.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever seen one here?
I have, but not here. I've seen them in Perth, and it was doing the same thing. 3 of them sitting on a branch in a domestic area, and just totally still, but just watching. It was in a park actually, and once you saw them, you could see them, but by God, you wouldn't have noticed them.
No, you're hard to pick up.
Yeah,
they're pretty cool birds. And there's probably our commonest owl, the boobook or mopoke. We're all familiar with him, and sometimes take up roosting in your shed.
We've had one round, Cole, we've had one round owlway the last 2 nights hunting moths outside our window.
Cool.
Big moths coming up, and they've been sweeping down to the window, taking them from the glass. Amazing.
Well, your light would be a food bonanza for it, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I got them on Mount Roland doing the same thing a lot at night, swooping against the window pane, plucking up the moss. They're great.
Yeah. And street lights, they like street lights, yeah. And there's the tawny frogmouth. That's the only species of frogmouth we have in Tas. There's a number of species on the mainland, but it's not an owl like a lot of people think. Even though it has the soft feathers and the silent flight, it's not an owl, and it lives on insects and or lizards and geckos and stuff like that. Beautiful bird. Yes.
What is it? If it's not an owl, what is it?
They think it might be an aberrant nightjar. It could be a derivative of the nightjar group of birds, but it's really a bit on its own, and the boffins haven't yet come up with a satisfactory categorisation for it.
And Fern's just asked, how do you tell male from female?
Of what?
Of the frogmouth.
Of the frogmouth? You can't, as far as I know. We had them nesting literally 2.5 metres from our kitchen window year after year in Townsville, and I could never pick the difference. No.
I suppose they can.
Oh, they know. I don't know how they know, but they know, which is fairly important, I suppose.
I clipped one of those up in the Kimberley of the back of the car and stopped and had a look and found it there. Not a mark, really. I must have just got it. So I gutted it and stuffed it with cotton wool with alcohol in it and wrapped it in the freezer bag and stuck it in the freezer. And I sent it down to the WA Museum for identification.
Oh, yeah. Was it a tawny or see up there? It could be one of the others.
It was a different one. Yeah, it wasn't the common tawny. It was
be marbled or papuan, yeah.
All right. It was in good condition.
Not going there.
Oh, yeah, because of that.
Carl?
Yeah.
Where does the little red-capped plover fit in? Is he a beach bird or is he a bush bird?
The red-capped plovers, they're beach birds, and we'll have those next week.
Okay, thank you.
We've got the whole. We're going to do all the birds you can see here in northwest Tasmania.
Right.
We're only dealing with ones you can actually see here. So keep your eyes on, because there's nothing here that it's not possible to see in this district, or this general region, I mean.
Right.
All right. Cuckoos.
Hang on a minute.
No.
Yep.
The technocrat here, she's thankfully knows how to drive this bloody thing.
Yeah, I've taught myself how to do it as well.
Are you? Yes, you're seeing that, aren't you? Yep.
All right. Cuckoos. Again, mostly migrants. Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mostly migrants. This is probably our commonest cuckoo. The pallid cuckoo has a fairly strident ascending call, quite distinctive when you get to know it. Like all the cuckoos, it's a parasite. It parasitizes, it loves the bigger honeyeaters, yellowthroats, and little wattlebirds. It parasitizes birds with open cup-shaped nests. Yeah, cuckoos in general are streamlined birds with, they've again got 2 toes forward and 2 aft. Zygodactylous feet, they're called. It's from the Greek yoke, meaning yoke. So even though they perch, they're not officially perching birds, but we've lumped them in with the perching birds just because that's where they sort of fit. They're not water birds. And again, if you see a roadkill or something, or the cat brings one in, God forbid, but its feet, if you're not sure what it is, and if it's got 2 toes forward and 2 aft, it'll be either well, you won't mistake a kingfisher for a cuckoo. So yeah, look at its feet.
That's true.
I didn't understand the parasites. You said that they use other birds' nests. Is that what you said? Or
Yeah, they lay their eggs in another bird's nest, and they're young ones, and they have a very short incubation period, sometimes only 12 days. So the female cuckoo, loaded up with an egg, usually only one, will watch, say, a pair of wattlebirds preparing their nest, and the cuckoo will be waiting in the wings, hiding around, lurking with intent. Lurking with intent. And the wattlebird will bugger off to get a bit more nesting material or have a feed or something, and the cuckoo will be in there, boom, and lay her egg. And if there's already wattlebird eggs in there, the parent bird will either throw the eggs out, or often the fledgling cuckoo will hatch more quickly than the host bird. And some cuckoos, fledglings young have a hollow in their back, and they get the host bird's eggs in this hollow in their back and stretch themselves up and hoy it overboard. And the poor old bloody host bird doesn't realise what's happened, and they'll sit there brooding this egg, and then this horrible cuckoo will hatch out, and they grow extremely fast and extremely large, often much larger than the host bird. And you'll see these 2 little honeyeaters or wrens or whatever furiously running themselves ragged trying to feed this bloody great huge fat cuckoo. But that's how they work. They don't build their own nest.
Yeah, they're mongrels.
Mongrels, yeah.
Well, that's what we would say as humans. But look, it's a very clever ploy. But I have to say that with some species like our blue wrens, some populations of blue wrens have woken up to the cuckoos. And if a cuckoo lays an egg in their nest, they just push off and build a whole other nest. They don't try and get rid of the egg or anything. They just bugger off and start again somewhere else and hope the cuckoo.
That's yeah.
That's another one, fantail cuckoo. It parasitizes birds with a side entrance, like your scrub wrens and thornbills that have a domed nest with a side entrance. And they feed by perch and pounce too. They'll sit quietly usually on a low branch, and when some invertebrate moves, you know, a grub or a beetle or something, they go down and get it. But they parasitise some of the smaller birds, honey eaters and so on. Not honey eaters, scrub wrens and the birds with a domed nest. And that they think that the domed nest, being dark inside, disguises the cuckoo's egg, so the host birds don't recognise it as an interloper's egg.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cunning.
Mm.
And these are two very similar birds, the bronze cuckoos, horsefields on the left and shining on the right. The shining bronze is like a little jewel. It's a gorgeous thing. Once again, parasitises thornbills and the like. Comes down in summer and makes a nuisance of itself. What else have I got here? Shining bronze. Yeah.
All cuckoos build in other birds' nests or lay their eggs in other birds' nests?
Sorry.
Do all cuckoos lay
All
their eggs in other birds' nests?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the true cuckoos do. All true cuckoos are parasitic, but I'll show you the cuckoo shrikes don't. That one, which is called a summer bird down here, that is a black-faced cuckoo shrike. It's not a true cuckoo, builds its own nest. And there's another cuckoo, a large one that you won't have to worry about here in Tassie. It's a great big thing called a pheasant cuckoo, which lives in Australia, northern Australia. It also builds. It's a cuckoo, but it's a real cuckoo, but it does build its own nest. So look, there are exceptions to every rule. But this is another summer migrant. You know this bird. It's really quite common, quite conspicuous.
Where does it come from? When it does come here, it usually we see them from say October onwards. But where have they come from?
Oh, look, they're virtually Australia-wide, their distribution. But the ones that come here are probably residents of southern Australia. But its distribution is huge. It's an Australia-wide bird. You can see it everywhere from the tropics to
sometimes called a shuffle wing, isn't it?
That's right. When they land, yeah, good point, Jeremy. When they land, they sort of jostle their wings into shape, which is a diagnostic in the bush, particularly if it's backlit and you can't actually see the colour of the bird. Its wing shuffle will give it away as being a back-faced cuckoo shrike.
Yeah.
Now we're on to raptors. Again, not strictly perching birds, but they're not water birds either.
No, you did have the two.
Yeah, the kookaburra.
Yeah, that's what.
Oh, did I miss them?
Yeah, you wanted them here.
Oh, yeah. All right, kingfishers. You'd all know the one on the left, and that was introduced to Tassie. In fact, it's increasing in numbers and playing havoc with our small birds when they're breeding. It eats, it destroys nests and eats the. It'll usually wait too until the fledglings are worth eating, big enough to be worth eating, and then it'll go in and rip the nest apart. When were they? They were introduced a long time ago in the 1800s. I couldn't tell you exactly when. A long time ago. Because people wanted to hear them laughing, you know, laugh, kookaburra, laugh. Not, it's a maniacal cackle. So there are moves afoot to have a kookaburra cull in Tassie because they are having a very damaging effect on our small lizards and so on. Because of our climate, our lizards and things do it pretty hard here. And the kookaburras are particularly hard on them, as well as on our small breeding birds.
Fern's question was, were they introduced to get rid of snakes?
No. Oh, I have read that. Yeah, that's possibly a part of it, yeah. But I don't know that for sure, Fern, I'm sorry. More than likely, actually, because they do eat snakes.
Yeah, but
have snake numbers gone down?
To laugh. Yeah. They were mainly introduced for laughter. Sorry?
Have snake numbers gone down?
Oh,
around here.
Yeah, but because of draining of swamps and stuff rather than kookaburras, I think. Because the kookaburras have decided that snakes probably a bit harder to deal with than nestlings out of a blue wren's nest, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the other one, of course, is the azure kingfisher, which lives right here on the English River in Lincoln. And Mike Hyland we found where they were nesting. They drill a hole in the bank of the river, and quite a deep tunnel, and they raise their young in there, and they don't do housekeeping. Their nest is often full of smelly, fishy parts, leftovers. But great little birds, and usually all you see is a piercing call and a blue streak going up the river. They're pretty cool, actually. And once again, the zygodactylus feet, 2 toes forward and 2 back. You can almost see it there on the yeah. This is not going again, I'm sorry.
Every time I go to that,
Right. Righto, raptors. We'll start at the top. The apex predator, now that the thylacines gone. This is the apex predator in Tassie, the wedge-tailed eagle. Quite a magnificent creature. Very variable in size and colour. Generally speaking, the biggest birds are female, and the darkest birds are the oldest. They darken with age, live in a variety of habitats, and build an enormous nest, as you'd know, which is occupied year after year. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 nests. I don't know whether that's to allow the parasites to die out. You know, they use nests in a not necessarily rotational way, but there seems to be it's a way of letting the parasites die out in a nest over a couple of years, and then they'll go back to that nest.
We've got a nesting pair just up here at the top of Aldina Road that come and go. So I didn't see them nest last year, so I thought they might have died, but they're back again now.
Okay, you don't know where the nest is, though?
No.
No. They're hard to find. If you are looking for a wedge-tailed nest, you will generally in Tasmania find them in a big old tree. They like really old trees with big, heavy forks in it. And it'll be usually out of the southwest wind on the northeast facing slope of a gully. Yeah.
Cole, years ago, there was an eagle's nest down in the eastern corner of our block, and very high up in big gum tree. But I found a chook's egg at the bottom of the nest, and I wondered, you know, obviously it had been brought there by the eagle, but I wondered how they carried a chook's egg.
How they'd what?
How they would carry an egg, because it was like a chicken egg that.
It would. Well, it could 2 ways. An eagle's beak, a wedge-tailed beak, certainly big enough to carry a chicken egg without breaking it, if it wanted to. But it also has got those fantastic talons, which would just pick up an egg. It'd be like a rugby player picking up a rugby ball, you know. And
okay.
But I don't know for sure. I've never seen an eagle carrying an egg. I've seen plenty of crows carrying eggs. But
You could have picked a chook up, and if you squeeze the chook she's going to lay, it'll just plop out.
well, that's possible too. That's entirely possible. I reckon I'd lay if I got picked up by an eagle.
It's called takeaway, yeah.
Good takeaway.
Cole?
Yeah.
Cole, we saw, and we've got 3 eagles, wedge-tailed eagles around here where we live, about 10 k's from the coast, and yesterday up at our property at Highclere, about another 20 k's back, there were 3 more.
Yeah, that'd be 2 different. It'd be mum, dad, and the kid. When you see 3,
Great to see.
when you see 3, it'd be mum, dad, and last year's kid. Can you hear me? There's a lot of noise on the.
Somebody's making a lot of there. Mute.
Can you mute it?
Couldn't hear that, Cole, sorry.
That's it. There was a lot of background noise. Somebody wasn't muted. Yeah, Jan. You've got two groups. I'd say there's two pairs, and one pair still got last year's young one with it. Is that making sense?
Yes, sounds like it.
Yeah.
Say so.
Cool. All right, we'll go one more if this thing will work. No, it's not working again.
Just hang on, people. Anybody else got another question? Because I can't get this to work.
I can show you this. I've been reading this. Has anyone read this?
Here we go. I'm back again.
Birds.
I'm back on here now.
Yeah, I've seen that, Sue, but
Very good.
now, what am I doing?
Yep.
Go on. Right, this is the other second biggest raptor in Tas, the white-bellied sea eagle, or white-breasted in this case, take your pick. Magnificent bird, almost as big as a wedge-tail, not quite, although a big female sea eagle will be slightly bigger than a runty male wedge-tail. So there's some overlap, but generally speaking, they're a bit smaller than the wedge-tail. They've certainly got a lot shorter tail, and that's the diagnostic when they're flying, because that's how you usually see them soaring around. You check out that tail compared to the wedge-tail, and there's your best diagnostic. And you might say, well, the bloody sea eagle is black and white, but it's not always. As the right-hand picture tells you, that's a juvenile. They take 5 years to reach full grey and white adult plumage. So they're motley, getting gradually lighter with each molt for 5 years before they achieve full adult plumage. And sea eagles, contrary to their name, they're quite happy to live way inland. They for example, live at Lake Echo in the Central Highlands, right in the geographical centre of Tasmania. In fact, I found 2 nests there when we were doing eagle research. One nest in a dead tree out in the lake, and another one in the big bush on the northern end of Lake Echo. So as long as there's fish and reptiles, they'll be there.
Oh, they often
That's
come in.
Mike Hyland. Yeah, Mike Hyland took these shots. This is a rare event. Well, it's probably not that rare. It's rare to capture it on film, and he couldn't resist. They're great shots, and they're very noisy. You can see that they've got their beaks open, and they're not just panting for air. They're actually calling, and they honk and honk and honk and honk very loudly, and don't sound anything like a raptor, more like a goose.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they build the hugest nest. They build an even bigger nest than a wedge-tail, a gigantic nest of sticks. And they use it year after year after year.
I've seen both of those birds, Cole, at the back of Wivenhoe. Just you know where the shops are, the little shopping centre in Wivenhoe,
Yeah.
And the showground. On the left, there's a lot of bush, and both of those, the wedge-tail and that sea eagle, are both in that bush from time to time.
Yeah, well, they will reluctantly cohabit in the same district, but not happily. And there's a lot of conflict between the two species. And the wedge-tails are generally the aggressors, but the sea eagles, if they're attacked by wedge-tails, they give back as good as they get. Although we did have one instance down at Mount Cameron, Woolnorth, when we were studying eagles there, of wedge-tails setting up shop, building a brand new nest within 100 metres of an old established sea eagle nest, and just out of a sheer act of belligerence. And the wedge-tails eventually killed the big female sea eagle, and that was the end of those sea eagles. They've never came back. So, what have I got? 10 minutes. I better move along. Oh, sorry. Brown goshawk on the left.
Jeremy had a question.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy. Go for
Is
it.
it true they mate for life, the eagles? They only
Yes.
mate
Yeah,
one.
they form a strong pair bond, as do wedge-tails. There's your two goshawks. The white morph is the common grey. The common version of the grey goshawk is the white morph here in Tassie. A very stunning bird. Flies with cockatoos. That's part of its disguise. Sneaks around sometimes in a mob of cockatoos, so that potential prey doesn't realise, just a mob of cockies, we won't take any notice of that. Next minute, out of that mob comes a bloody white goshawk, bang, you're gone, you know. And that brown goshawk sitting on our quail cage in our yard, just waiting in case a quail happens to slip out under the cage. And that's the male brown goshawk on the left and the male sparrowhawk on the right. And they're very different in size, but unless they're together, that's hard to pick in the field. But the diagnostic that I find most useful is that the sparrowhawk on the right has more goggly eyes, doesn't have that fierce eyebrow like the goshawk. You see how his eyes are bugged out? And he also has a squarer tail. The goshawk in flight is a rounded tail. Okay? I better keep rolling. So here's the peregrine on the left and the Australian hobby on the right. Both bird assassins, kill on the wing. You all know about the peregrine. It's got a worldwide distribution. Reputedly the fastest flying bird in the world. They've been clocked at hundreds of kilometres an hour in a stoop. Both the terror of small birds. Or not even that small. The peregrine can readily kill domestic pigeons, you know, homing pigeon. And they nest on cliffs, the peregrine. There's the brown falcon, very common bird. Probably the commonest, actually, of our raptors, often seen, as in the right-hand picture, sitting on a fence post. Feeds on anything from rabbits to large insects. Lovely bird, actually, brown falcon. Can hover. You'll see them sometimes hovering above a paddock, looking down. The marsh harrier or swamp harrier, swampy. The diagnostic of them is that pale rump. They fly slow and low across terrain, looking for victims, and they nest in swamps. They nest on the ground, and they've taken to nesting in pyrethrum crops in Tassie, because pyrethrum takes a couple of years to be harvested. They will often take up residence with a nest on the ground and raise young in the middle of a pyrethrum paddock. And if the farmer sees it in time, there's a bit of an awareness now among the farmers, and they tend to leave a little bit of a patch around the nest, and the bird will stay there and raise its young, and everybody's happy. Pretty cool.
Cole, they've got a really interesting call. It sounds like a cat mewing.
Yeah. And it's a funny, pathetic little call, isn't it, for such a fierce predator? It doesn't fit. Yeah. And the older the birds get, the paler they get. That's a fairly old bird. That's quite pale. You'll see them much darker. It'll be a young bird. And once again, most of them migrate from the mainland every year and come down here. Ankeen kestrel on the left. That's our small, very small kind of falcon. Well, that's both pictures of the kestrel. They hover. Feed on anything from skinks to large insects and rats and mice. The corvids, not the covids, the corvids. There they are. We haven't got many. That's our forest raven.
Love it.
Commonly called a crow. Very smart birds. Hard to get a photo of them. But that's them. The black and grey currawong. The black currawong is the one on the left, and that's two young black currawongs. You can see the yellow gape, and they're obviously feeding on something in the kelp washed up on the beach. That's a black currawong, lives only in Tassie. It's endemic. This is the grey currawong, which in Tassie is black. This is just to throw you off the scent, right? The grey currawong here is black, but it's got more white on it than the black currawong, as you can see. And its main diagnostic is its voice. It's utterly different. This makes a clinking sound. In fact, on the mainland in places, it's called the clinking currawong. And this one, well, I'm sure you all know what a black currawong sounds like. I'm not going to try and imitate it here. once again, very widespread, intelligent birds, very adaptable. That bird's making a comeback after the DDT nearly wiped them out in Tassie years ago. The Australian magpie, gorgeous thing. Wonderful in that it, if they move into your property, they'll keep the kookaburras away. So your small birds have got a better chance. They will eat small birds sometimes, these, but only opportunistically, and they boss it over the kookaburras. And there's the other Corvid raptor, the grey butcherbird. There's been one singing around here in Wynyard in recent times. Beautiful voice. You'd all know it. Has a habit of hanging its prey, which is mice or small birds, in the fork of a tree or on a thorny spike, like a butcher does, hanging the meat. Yeah, so now, have I got time to do that?
Well, talk about it, whether you want questions or whether
Yeah, well, look, any questions? And then we've got a few vagrants to cover, but we don't have to do those now, but I'm certainly open to questions for now.
Oh, can I just ask about the rufous night herons?
Yes. Yes.
Are they still at the road that goes up beside the old Wynyard Hospital?
Yeah, Camp Creek.
Yeah, Camp Creek. Yeah. Well, they were last time I looked.
Oh,
Kathy, yeah. Yeah.
and what time of the year?
Now, they should be there now. They disappear in summer. They obviously go somewhere to breed. And another place you can see them is near the Axman's Hall of Fame if you're ever in Latrobe. There's sometimes several roosting in those trees right on the river's edge there in Latrobe.
That will be in the Waterbirds, Kathy, too, next
Yeah,
week.
that'll be next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
We haven't touched the Waterbirds yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, has anybody got other questions? Otherwise, Cole's got about 5 more minutes of vagrants in this area. All happy? Okay, I'll do that. Hang on. Oh, shit. Try again. Excuse me, people. I'm trying to do this in the wrong position on the
Yeah, I've got I'm occupying her saddle. Yeah. Back there.
Yeah.
So vagrants, and what we mean by vagrants is birds that aren't regularly here, but they get blown down in storms or get lost and turn up unexpectedly. And sometimes they hang around for a while. Sometimes there's more than one, but generally it's lone birds that are either inexperienced and get lost or get blown by bad weather from the mainland. So this is one that turns up here from time to time, very common bird on the mainland, the magpie lark. The female's the one up there, that's the female. You see the different markings, and this is the male here. And I've seen these in the most unlikely places, like sitting on a reef at Granville Harbour once. But they haven't established. They turn up here from time to time, but there haven't been enough of them to establish a viable population yet, which surprises me because the habitat here is perfect for them. There's no reason why they wouldn't survive very well here if they bothered to set up shop. All right, white-browed wood swallow on the left, gorgeous bird. Turns up from time to time from the mainland, related to the dusky wood swallow we saw earlier. One of those powder down preeners, always a beautiful, neat-looking bird. Flies, hawks for insects, flies high usually. This one, seen recently over near Port Sorell, the white-winged triller.
What are they called?
Oh, somebody had a question, but it's gone.
It's from Fern, and it said, are they called peewees?
Oh, yes, the
Yes.
magpie larks.
Yes. Yeah, peewee, mudlark, magpie lark, Murray magpie, they're all relevant names to that bird, yes. All right, white-winged triller. another insectivore. Turns up here from time to time. So far hasn't established a population. Now these are gorgeous things. And the one on the left, the forest kingfisher, was seen here in the English River a couple of years ago by a mate of mine, and photographed, obviously. So that can be there as well as the Asia kingfisher, as can this one. This one was seen, there was one of these that spent quite a few months living in the Devonport area last year. So sacred kingfisher. Lovely little birds. And gang cockatoo, they can occasionally show up. There used to be a viable population of those on King Island, but they devastated King Island with clearing, as you know, and so that was the end of them.
Beautiful.
Which is a bit of a shame. That turns up here sometimes too, and there was one of those in the Devonport district for quite a while in recent times. Beautiful bird, rose-crowned fruit dove. But it would never survive here. There's just not enough wild fruit here to sustain it. Gorgeous nonetheless.
Beautiful.
I think that's really it this time. But any more questions before I push off?
That was awesome, Cole. Thanks.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cole.
Well, it's a bit of a rush. It's a rush trip, but yeah.
Thanks, Cole.
Thank
Thanks.
Yeah, thank
Yeah, good stuff.
Thank you.
Back to you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cole. Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Cole.
See you
See you next week.
See you next week.
Yeah, good.
Got
Thank
the clap.
Knowledge. It's fantastic, the amount that you've learned and memorised. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you. There's more than that. I mean, that was an abbreviated.
Oh, God.
But don't get me started, you know. You know, birds are all the same. But seriously, if you see a bird you can't identify and you can get a photo, even a crap photo, on your phone or something, send it to me. I might be able to identify it. Or send it to your local friendly bird nerd. You know, there's a few of us around.
Oh, right.
Right.
Oh.
Cole,
Yes.
Cole, Annie Hayes here. Have you ever seen the site on Facebook called Crap Bird Photography?
Yes, I have. Yeah, well, look, if you're members of that, send me a photo. I'd love it.
It's great. It's really funny.
It is funny. Yeah. I like it. Yep.
Anyway, that was great. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it, Cole.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, and you'll get a different invitation to next week. So do not click on this old link. You'll get a different invitation to click onto for next week.
And we're going to cover the water birds and some of the seabirds and waders and stuff. A very interesting, much more diverse group of birds than we had this week. See you there.
Amazing.
Thank you, Reese.
Bye.
Thank you,
Cheers,
Cole.
Cole. Thank you, Reese.
Cheers.
Thanks
Bye.
for driving. Cheers,
Bye,
Cole.
everybody.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.